So picking up from where we left off on the purchase invoice, we can choose then to say if we want to batch or not batch, archive a transaction, enter gross values, etc. We can put a transaction on dispute or make all transactions go on dispute by default. We do have a purchase invoice register module available within Dimensions as well if we choose to purchase it, but this would provide, I suppose this sort of batch option would provide some mechanism to ensure that invoices aren't paid before ready to actually pay them. Speaking of paying invoices, we do have some additional functionality on the purchases side of things here as well. So we have our remittances, as you would have had before, but we now have a suggested payments function in this as well. And this allows me then to set a sort of payment sequence. So we could start it by having somebody generate a list of invoices that they believe are due for payment or ought to be paid, and that can then be passed to somebody who has more authorization to say whether those invoices will be paid or not. And once they're approved for payment by that person, they can be passed back or forward to somebody else to actually generate the remittances. Or we can just go with the classic approach, which would be to have the person working in on accounts to go straight in and generate remittances. Remittance check just means that we can pay all of our suppliers. Remittance backs will only bring up suppliers for whom we've entered the bank details on the system. The remittance check interface looks very similar to what if in Horizons. We can enter a series of search criteria, or we can just list all outstanding purchase invoices on the system, choose the ones that we wish to pay, toggle them to yes. If we want to part pay or pay slightly less or whatever, we can choose to enter that amount. If discounts are due, we're going to be told here on the screen. We can actually then offer or give ourselves discounts in certain instances as well. So we can say in that case we're paying the full amount. However, the actual allocated value will be that, but the discount that we're going to take off is 603.08, for example, and we can just tab that off. We're getting the warning message, as you would have in Horizons, telling us that there's no term set up for a discount in this case, but that doesn't stop us from proceeding to actually generate the discount. And then when we just go ahead and print the actual documentation. So we end up with remittance advice then, and on that advice, if we go to the second page, we should see that we have the overall value of what has been paid, and below that then we're going to see what discount we have taken off of the transaction. Adding this to the system then of course is going to credit whatever bank account or nominal account we specified here, and transfer the discount to whatever discount account we have specified on the system. So just going and looking at a supplier's account for a moment then, if we look for somebody with whom we've had a significant level of transactions and a balance on their account right now, looking at the supplier then we can just actually drill in the transactions. This is probably where the biggest changes have happened between Horizons and Dimensions. So this allows us to see a listing of transactions on that supplier account. We can then drill into the detail levels of that transaction. The lower part of the screen will give more information as to the analysis code. Nominal account was debited and credited. We right click on the transaction. We have various options such as viewing the allocation history, viewing the transaction itself so we can see who entered when. We can also see the double entry from here. So if we just right click on the transaction again, we can select that off. There is a module as well called corrections available, where we can actually choose to change details of the transaction. So we could actually move it to another period if we wanted to. If we just edit that, we can actually then change the period to which the transaction has been posted, provided it hasn't been allocated. So in this instance, as we can see there, we're being prevented from changing the period because this one has been allocated. You can see the outstanding amount is 0. If we go for one of the later transactions, just pick up on one of these invoices, go to the corrections module and edit the transaction, and then if I want, I can actually move it into a different accounting period. If I wanted to, I can also go to the detailed lines of this transaction, and if needs be, I could even change the monetary value from here, change the VAT rate, change the purchase analysis code. Lots of options on that, so it's quite a powerful tool something that we might look at in more detail during training. We even have the option of deleting the transaction. If we do modify a transaction, there is a note maintained on the system. So if we just go back in here, and if I was just to change this amount for my own purposes, just make a big difference to it, we're then going to get a screen. Are you sure you wish to update this? And all that's happened now is that transaction, because it was monetary change, it's effectively now will have changed. As soon as I close out of this window, I will see the system revises itself and transaction value has changed, and that impact has worked across the system. So the balance on the nominal accounts, turnover, etc. has all been updated, as has the balance on the supplier account. So quite a powerful tool. We can then add transactions to a payment run. So effectively this is going into the suggested payments functionality that allows us to say this transaction we now believe is ready for a payment. From this window, as we've alluded to elsewhere, we can export this entire list to Excel, and using this type of functionality, the export to Excel is a lot cleaner, and it will come out in a columnar format exactly as it is now. If we want to, we could actually use an option to collapse or expand all lines. If we choose expand, not only do we get the header level of the transaction, we also get all of the detailed lines, and exporting those to Excel, the detailed lines stay open as well. Another nice feature here, we have the pin inquiry, which basically just means that we can actually take that window and put a pin in it, and then we can go away and do something else. So for example, if I want to go to purchase invoices, I can go off to my purchase invoice window, but then an inquiry window stays open, so I can come back in here and look at details. And having that pin, I can then change my search criteria. So for example, if I was looking at a different supplier, just say we're looking at this supplier's account, I could actually copy that, come back to my inquiry window, change the account code there if I wanted to. And then I'm seeing the transactional history for that supplier. So this would be a nice way to just check to ensure that I haven't already entered the invoice that I'm looking at. Perhaps I might have entered it but only batched it. So within my inquiry screen here, I can also choose to include transactions that might be in batch and refresh that, and just allows me to check to ensure that there's no fear of entering the same invoice twice. So lots of enhancements. The objective with this training was really just to give you a brief introduction to the system and hopefully provide an assurance that while it's all changed, it all has remained reasonably familiar as well. The I suppose navigation functionality, while it's enhanced, it isn't a million miles away from what we had in Horizons. Hopefully you'll see that it's similar enough, but there are improvements. There are lots of things that we will look at in training proper. But for now, I hope that gives you, whets your appetite and gives you a sense that the training won't be too arduous or laborious. If you have any questions, perhaps just drop me an email and we'll seek to address that either in a future video or when we convene a brief online training session. I think the next step for us though is to try and get the upgrade done. And thank you for watching.